He woke up like any other morning, unaware that this would be the day everything unraveled. On the kitchen table, a stack of unpaid bills sat untouched once again. Thomas Miller, 42, owner of a small electrical supply store in Detroit, believed the slump was temporary. Customers would return, sales would bounce back, things would eventually get better. But time had stopped being an ally. That afternoon, an eviction notice arrived along with a message from the bank. The company's account was frozen due to unpaid debts. Panic didn't roar, it crept in, slow and suffocating. Bankruptcy was no longer a distant fear. It was knocking on his door. For 17 years, Thomas had been the textbook good business owner. Honest, hardworking, committed. But none of that protected him from collapse. He ignored obvious red flags: declining monthly sales, late commercial rent, and the loss of a crucial contract with a local trade school. Instead of cutting costs or asking for help, he relied on blind hope. In the use, data from the Small Business Administration shows that around 20% of small businesses fail within their first 2 years. Thomas had made it to year 17, but burnout doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it comes masked as routine, disguised as perseverance. Thomas' fatal flaw was ignoring the numbers. His accountant warned him about rising fixed costs and suggested renegotiating rent or liquidating stagnant inventory. But Thomas feared change would scare his customers. He didn't want to look desperate. Behind the scenes, he maxed out business credit cards, took out high-interest loans, and juggled late payments. According to the Federal Reserve, over 60% of bankrupt business owners in 2023 use personal credit to plug business holes. He wasn't managing the crisis. He was burying it. The turnaround didn't begin until after the collapse. With his store shut down, credit destroyed, and no income, Thomas reluctantly enrolled in a free mentorship program offered by SCORE, a nonprofit tied to the SBA. There, he learned basic financial tools he had never used before: cash flow tracking, break-even analysis, low-cost marketing strategies. By applying the 4 cuts method, reducing fixed expenses, removing low-turnover inventory, renegotiating debt, and reinvesting only in high-margin items, he launched a small e-commerce business selling cables and adapters. 6 months later, sales were modest, but his profits were consistent. For the first time, he understood exactly where every dollar came from and where it went. Thomas's bankruptcy was preventable. He rebuilt his business online, generating just 40% of what his store once earned, but with greater net profit. Today, he says, being a good person isn't enough. You have to know your numbers. His mistake was emotional, believing good intentions would protect him from collapse. His story is all too common and serves as a warning. Hard work doesn't guarantee financial survival. What saves you is the ability to read the signs, follow a method, and ask for help before the foundation crumbles. The snow was beginning to fall in Chicago when Linda Harper closed her bakery for the night, unaware that it would be one of her final shifts. The register showed barely $180 in total sales, half of what she needed just to break even. She tried to shake it off, telling herself the cold weather was to blame. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Customers had been trickling away for months. Rising ingredient costs, late supplier payments, and the weight of her daughter's medical bills were stacking like bricks on her shoulders. Linda wasn't lazy. She wasn't careless. She just didn't know how close she was to collapse. Linda's story mirrors that of thousands of struggling entrepreneurs in the U.S., particularly among women who run small, community-based businesses. According to a 2023 report by the National Women's Business Council, nearly 31% of women-owned small businesses faced severe cash flow problems last year, a number that doubled since the pandemic. Linda's bakery was more than a store. It was a dream fueled by love and necessity. After her husband walked out in 2017, she relied on her baking to support her daughter, Ava, who was diagnosed with juvenile arthritis. For years, the bakery pulled them through. But emotional resilience doesn't replace financial structure. One of Linda's biggest blind spots was financial awareness. She tracked sales loosely, avoided detailed budgets, and never separated business and personal expenses. At tax time, everything was a mess. Like many small business owners, she feared confronting her numbers. She assumed as long as she worked hard and kept the ovens warm, everything would even out. But baking bread at 4 a.m. doesn't balance that. Her rent increased by 11% that year. Her electric bill nearly doubled. Meanwhile, her menu hadn't changed in 3 years, and prices stayed the same. Inflation was suffocating her, one muffin at a time. Then came the overdraft. One morning, she opened her bank app and saw a negative balance of $973. Payroll was due in 2 days. A friend suggested she apply for a merchant cash advance, fast money for small businesses with poor credit. Linda accepted it without fully reading the terms. Within weeks, she was paying back $185 a day through automatic withdrawals. These loans, often labeled cash flow killers, are marketed as lifelines but operate with effective annual interest rates of 70 to 200%. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau warns that such advances are among the top causes of accelerated bankruptcies in minority and women-owned businesses. The breaking point came when she bounced a check to her flour supplier and received a court summons for missed rent. Linda had 30 days to vacate or come up with $12,000 in back payments. That night, she stayed awake scrolling through forums and Facebook groups for struggling business owners. In a thread about pre-bankruptcy survival, she found a free resource, the Business Stabilization Program from her local SBA partner network. The next day, she called. Through the program, Linda was assigned a volunteer financial coach who reviewed every aspect of her business. Together, they built a basic 3-month survival plan, slash expenses by 40%, create a digital menu, raise prices by 12%, and offer pre-orders through Instagram. They launched a Support Small, Save Big campaign using emotional storytelling, featuring Ava's journey. Orders surged. The community rallied. A local food blogger shared her story, and she went viral in the neighborhood. Linda still had to move. The bakery couldn't sustain its brick-and-mortar rent. But she pivoted into a home-based business with delivery-only service. She partnered with 2 nearby coffee shops to supply fresh goods in exchange for visibility and profit sharing. Within 5 months, her debt was halved. Her daughter had health insurance through a state aid program she didn't even know she qualified for until her coach helped her apply. Today, Linda says the hardest part wasn't losing the storefront. It was admitting she needed help. I thought failure meant I wasn't strong enough. But real strength is knowing when to ask for directions before driving off a cliff. Her story reflects a harsh truth. Many bankruptcies aren't caused by laziness or irresponsibility. They stem from silence, shame, and a lack of tools. Linda didn't fail because she was a bad businesswoman. She failed because no one ever taught her the warning signs. In America, the myth of self-reliance often overshadows the power of guidance. But as Linda learned, identifying red flags early and getting outside support can mean the difference between closing a dream and rebuilding it with new foundations. Her message to others: if you're drowning, don't pretend you're swimming. Scream for a rope. The last box was taped shut when Marcus Dillard looked around his dark, empty office for the final time. It was supposed to be a tech consultancy firm, agile, smart, future-proof. Instead, he was now moving out after 3 years of dwindling contracts, shrinking margins, and mounting pressure. The fluorescent lights flickered above him like a cruel reminder of the energy he had wasted trying to keep something alive that had been dying quietly for years. What puzzled Marcus most wasn't why it ended. it was how he didn't see it coming. Marcus, 36, had always believed in the hustle. A former systems engineer from Atlanta, he left corporate life in 2018 to launch his own consultancy. At first, things took off fast. His firm landed government contracts, offered cybersecurity audits to small businesses, and even got a feature in a local magazine. But what began as a promising trajectory soon plateaued. As contracts dried up, he pivoted, repeatedly offering web services, app development, even tech training workshops. It all looked good on paper, but he was running in place, not moving forward. One major reason Marcus failed was his inability to distinguish revenue from profit. It's a mistake many entrepreneurs make, especially in the service industry, where high invoices often hide razor-thin margins. In 2023, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported that nearly 45% of professional service businesses failed within 5 years, with cash flow mismanagement cited as the leading cause. Marcus was earning money, but spending even more to keep the operation looking impressive. Fancy office space, software licenses he barely used, outsourced work billed at a premium. His image outgrew his income. Another crack in the foundation was his avoidance of specialization. Marcus was trying to be everything to everyone: web developer, data analyst, IT consultant. His website listed 18 different services, none of which had consistent demand. This jack-of-all-trades strategy diluted his brand and confused potential clients. Research from the Harvard Business Review indicates that businesses with a clearly defined niche grow 20% faster and are twice as likely to survive economic shifts. But Marcus kept stretching himself thinner with each new pivot, convinced that more services meant more safety. In truth, it meant less focus, less efficiency, and eventually less income. Then came the client drought. Over a 6-month stretch, he went from 5 monthly retainers to just 1. Instead of cutting expenses immediately, he relied on a personal line of credit to stay afloat. At one point, 70% of his income was being used to service debt. With every missed payment, his credit score sank. He ignored calls from lenders, deleted bank emails, and stopped opening envelopes that looked like bills. Financial paralysis had set in. The breakthrough only happened after Marcus attended a free webinar on business restructuring hosted by the Minority Business Development Agency. He almost didn't join, telling himself it was just another motivational pitch. But one phrase from the speaker hit hard. If your business can survive without debt, you don't have a business, you have an illusion. That night, Marcus stayed up until 3 a.m., reviewing his numbers, crying more than once. The illusion was real, and it was time to end it. Over the next 2 weeks, he executed a brutal self-recovery plan. He closed the office, sold his unused equipment, terminated non-essential subscriptions, and let go of his part-time assistant. But more importantly, he chose a single focus: cybersecurity training for small law firms, a service where he had deep experience and growing demand. He launched a minimalist website, rewrote all his materials, and reached out directly to previous clients, not to sell, but to ask for honest feedback. The responses shocked him. "You were trying to do too much. We didn't even know what your core service was. You're better at teaching than consulting." Armed with clarity and purpose, Marcus rebranded under the name SafeLock EDU and began offering webinars, paid workshops, and security audits for legal offices. Within 4 months, he secured 3 long-term clients, cut his overhead by 80%, and finally started saving again. For the first time since starting his business, he felt like an owner instead of a survivor. Today, Marcus reflects on his collapse not with bitterness, but with insight. "I was chasing validation, not sustainability," he says. "I thought being busy meant being successful. But activity without direction is just motion sickness." His lesson is one every aspiring entrepreneur must hear: more isn't always better. Without a strategy, growth becomes a trap. And without focus, Even the hardest worker will eventually burn out. Marcus didn't just rebuild his business, he rebuilt his mindset. He now mentors other tech entrepreneurs, teaching them what he learned the hard way: to read the data, cut the excess, and specialize before it's too late. Because sometimes, failure isn't an ending. It's an invitation to begin the right way. Jessica Nguyen sat quietly in her cramped apartment in Houston, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. The words on the spreadsheet blurred together. Her online fashion boutique was barely scraping by, and the mounting bills were a constant shadow. Jessica had poured her heart and savings into the business she launched 3 years ago. Yet despite her passion and countless late nights, profits remained elusive. Her dreams of independence felt more like a distant mirage. The pressure to succeed was suffocating. Jessica's struggles weren't unique. Across the U.S., a staggering 82% of small business owners admit to lacking formal financial education, according to a 2023 survey by the National Small Business Association. Without a solid grasp of budgeting, forecasting, and financial controls, many founders operate blindfolded, relying on gut feelings rather than data. Jessica was no exception. She managed inventory manually, ignored cash flow statements, and avoided confronting overdue invoices. The result? Chronic uncertainty and missed opportunities. One pivotal mistake was Jessica's failure to separate personal and business finances. Like many entrepreneurs, she used her personal credit cards to cover business expenses, blurring lines that led to confusion and escalating debt. The Federal Reserve reports that nearly 60% of small business owners in distress mix personal and business finances, increasing the risk of financial disaster. Jessica found herself juggling credit card minimum payments, business loans, and family expenses, creating a financial pressure cooker. Her second challenge was pricing. Jessica was competing with big box retailers and fast fashion giants who could afford razor-thin margins and mass production. To stay competitive, she kept prices low, sacrificing profitability. According to the Small Business Administration, nearly 45% of small retailers fail due to underpricing and margin mismanagement. Jessica's boutique was no exception. Low prices brought customers, but didn't cover operational costs. She was trapped in a cycle where volume didn't equal profitability. Jessica's turning point arrived unexpectedly. After missing a critical rent payment, she received a letter threatening eviction from her small warehouse space. The stress triggered a panic attack, prompting her to seek help. She connected with a local nonprofit offering financial literacy workshops tailored for women entrepreneurs. Through this program, Jessica learned the basics of budgeting, cash flow analysis, and pricing strategy. For the first time, she created a detailed monthly budget, forecasting revenues and expenses with realistic assumptions. One technique that transformed her approach was the implementation of cost-plus pricing. By calculating the true cost of each product, including shipping, marketing, and overhead, then adding a sustainable markup, Jessica began to price her items more accurately. This change increased her average profit margin by 15% within 3 months. She also streamlined her inventory, cutting slow-moving products and focusing on bestsellers. According to Forbes, such inventory optimization can boost small business profitability by up to 25%. Jessica's new financial discipline extended to cash flow management. She adopted simple tools like spreadsheet trackers and invoicing apps to monitor payments and anticipate shortages. She negotiated longer payment terms with suppliers and encouraged early payments from customers through small discounts. These tactics improved liquidity and reduced the stress of unpredictable cash flows. Today, Jessica's boutique operates with healthier margins and a clearer vision. She no longer chases customers at unsustainable prices, but targets a niche audience willing to pay for quality and uniqueness. Her personal finances are separate, her debt manageable, and her stress levels significantly lower. She often shares her story with aspiring entrepreneurs. Financial knowledge isn't glamorous, but it's the foundation of survival. You can have the best product or idea, but without understanding your money, you're building on sand. Jessica's experience underscores a vital truth. Passion and creativity must be matched with financial literacy to ensure business longevity. Small business owners must prioritize learning basic financial principles early or risk facing crises that could have been avoided. As Jessica learned, the power to change your future lies in the numbers you choose to understand and the discipline to act on them. On a humid summer evening in Miami, Antonio Ramirez sat on the porch of his modest home, scrolling through his investment app with a mix of hope and anxiety. After years of struggling to keep his small landscaping business afloat, he had started exploring ways to generate extra income, and investments seemed promising. Yet, every click reminded him how little he really understood about the world of stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. His dream was to build a financial cushion strong enough to weather future storms, but the path forward felt confusing and risky. Antonio's situation was typical for many small business owners across the U.S. According to a 2024 Federal Reserve study, nearly 70% of small business owners report that supplemental income or investment returns are critical for sustaining their personal and business finances. But many lack the necessary knowledge to make informed decisions, often falling prey to risky ventures or scams promising quick returns. For Antonio, the goal was clear: find safe, reliable ways to earn beyond the daily grind, but without jeopardizing what little capital he had left. His first step was seeking guidance. He joined a community financial education program sponsored by his local Chamber of Commerce, where experts emphasized the importance of diversification and realistic expectations. The concept of not putting all your eggs in one basket was eye-opening. Antonio learned that relying solely on his business was risky, especially in an industry vulnerable to seasonal changes and weather disruptions. One of the simplest, yet most powerful strategies Antonio adopted was the creation of multiple income streams. Beyond his landscaping service, he began offering consulting sessions for new business owners looking to start similar ventures. This side income provided steady cash flow while requiring minimal upfront investment. According to Forbes, side businesses can boost overall income by up to 25% for small entrepreneurs and provide a financial buffer during tough times. Antonio also explored conservative investment options tailored for beginners. Guided by a financial advisor, he allocated a small portion of his savings into low-cost index funds and government bonds. These investments offered steady, albeit modest, returns without exposing him to excessive risk. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission recommends such diversified portfolios for individuals seeking to grow wealth sustainably over time. To fund his investments, Antonio had to make tough choices. He trimmed personal expenses, canceled non-essential subscriptions, and negotiated better terms with suppliers and clients. The discipline of budgeting became a crucial part of his routine. Over time, he saw his financial resilience grow. An emergency fund took shape, protecting him from unexpected business downturns or personal crises. Antonio's story highlights the vital role of education and strategy in building a stable financial future. Too often, small business owners focus solely on daily survival, overlooking opportunities to build wealth that can provide long-term security. By embracing multiple income streams and smart investing, Antonio began breaking the cycle of financial vulnerability. Today, Antonio shares his journey at local business meetups, encouraging others not to wait until a crisis forces action. It's about making small, consistent steps, he says. You don't have to be rich overnight, but you do have to start somewhere and keep moving forward. His hope is that others learn from his experience and realize that financial freedom isn't a far-off dream. It is a series of deliberate choices made every day.